All right, so here we are in ArcMap. You can see that I've called my data frame here Georeferencing Demo. So I'm in the MXD that I indicated in my Windows Explorer window. And here's the Codorus JPEG. That is a JPEG of the entire Codorus State Park, Lake Marburg area, just over the line in southern Pennsylvania. And we also have the streets layer from ArcGIS Online. So we're zoomed out at the scale of the entire world here. And of course, we have imagery as well, which I'll use later on. Again, both of these layers are from ArcGIS Online. What I want to get into, though, here for this particular demo is really talk about the georeferencing toolbar, which is these tools right here. And if you've not seen that turned on before, you can just come over to the gray space and right-click, and you can turn on your georeferencing tool. And you can see that I already have mine turned on. And another place you can do that is under Customize Toolbars. It opens up basically the same list of available tools. And so as we move on throughout the course, towards the latter part of the course, we'll start using other tools from this list. But this particular one that we're using is the georeferencing tool. So you can undock that and just kind of put that out here in the middle if you want to use it, or if you want to use it while it's docked, you can just kind of basically place it up there so it's up and out of the way. So what I did want to do is just make this video, or dedicate this video, to the georeferencing toolbar and talk about a couple of the things that you can expect. The very first thing, before I go into the georeferencing pull down here, is that you'll notice that there's going to be a target layer that the tool is focused on. In this case, Codorus.jpg is the only one in there because we can't manipulate anything with the ArcGIS Online data. So that streets and imagery, those streets and imagery layers, we can't do anything to. So the only one that we can georeference is the Codorus.jpg. We want to be mindful of that if you have multiple rasters that you're georeferencing within your particular MXD. You'll notice that we have a couple of other different tools here, the rotate, the shift, and the scale tool. We'll use those a little bit more as we actually do the demo on georeferencing. And then here's the control points tool. So this is the tool that we actually use to tell the raster, I want you to move from where you currently are to this new location relative to the raster data, to the reference raster data. So if you remember from my rules of thumb, green means go, red means stop. So we're going to establish our green crosses where we want the raster to move from and where we want it to move to. And then of course there's going to be our link table, which there's nothing in there currently, but if we open up that window, it's going to show us what number link we've placed and then where it's moving from and where it's moving to, and it's going to give us that RMS error for each of our control points in this column over here. And it'll give us a total RMS error as well. So again, as mentioned in our rules of thumb, if you will, for georeferencing, I'll just pop back into that here really quick. There's already a couple of things that we've talked about that are going to be important, and that's going to be our control links. Green means go, red means stop, and then of course our RMS error, which is going to be that statistical measurement of, let me bring up that part of the slides here, that RMS error that is going to give us that statistical measure of where we clicked and how close that interpolated link has actually placed our raster. So jumping out of that, you can see where that information is going to start to come into play. But we'll look at that in a little bit more detail a little bit later. We'll talk about where this Codorus JPEG is. It's actually sitting out here in the middle of the Gulf of Guinea, Atlantic Ocean, South Atlantic Ocean right now. And knowing that Pennsylvania is somewhere over here, that's where we're going to be moving it to. But we'll be doing that in the next demo. So right now what I want to do is get to know more of this. So I've already talked about a couple of these tools, but then let's talk about the georeferencing tool itself. You'll notice that update georeferencing is grayed out because I have no control points, I have no links that are put in. But once I've created my links and I've moved my raster, that is what I want to click to actually generate the world file that is going to tell that raster where it is in the world. So that's going to be an important tool later on. Rectify is a tool that you use to actually write out a whole new raster, although as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go ahead and pull up in my Windows Explorer window again here. When we do update georeferencing, this Codorus JPEG that I'm clicking on right here is actually going to have another file written out that is going to say Codorus.jgw, which is going to be our world file. So then that file, which will probably just show up down here, will be associated with this file, and it will tell it where in the world it's supposed to go. And that happens as soon as you click Update Georeferencing. If you want to write the raster out to a whole new separate file, separate from the original raster, you would use the Rectify tool. We'll use the Fit to Display tool, which will take the raster and move it into whatever current zoom level you're in, which is a handy-dandy tool to use. So I'll show you and demonstrate how that works. The flip and the rotate, not unlike what we're looking at here with these tools, the flip with the rotate tool. You can manually turn them by 90 degrees or flip them horizontally and vertically. I don't use these tools a whole lot, but they are there in case it helps you to actually move your raster around. And then, of course, there's the transformation. And as I mentioned in the rules of thumb or overview of the georeferencing tools, these different polynomials and the adjust and spline will all become available depending on the number of control points that we place. And we'll see how that comes into play when we look at the help menus. As I mentioned again in my rules of thumb, turn off auto adjust. That's one of the things that you want to make sure you do. And then updating display, deleting your control points, and then resetting your transformation. You can use all of these to make updates, to change the raster itself, to basically get rid of everything, or to completely reset the raster back to its original position so that you can start over again. Again, I like to just go ahead and start off with turning off auto adjust, so I'll go ahead and turn that off now. And again, that way it'll keep it from moving. Once I set my first link, I don't want my rasters to move until I set up all of my links. So that's just a quick overview of the georeferencing tool itself, and then some of the other tools that are associated with it out here. And one of the things that I wanted to refer back to again in the last bit of this demo here is adding your reference data. I've already added my ArcGIS Online data. You can see the coordinates down here in the lower right hand corner, but just to illustrate to you that we have accepted the coordinate system of the streets and the imagery layers from ArcGIS Online, I can just go into the data frame properties. So I'm going to right click on the actual data frame itself and go to Properties and click on the Coordinate System tab, which I've already done here, and you can see that it is defined as Web Mercator Auxiliary Sphere. If I were to open up a blank ArcMap with no data in it whatsoever, it wouldn't have any kind of a coordinate system associated because there would be no data here in this window that I'm indicating until you add some data. And once you add some data, if it has a coordinate system and projection defined for it, the data frame then receives or accepts that coordinate system. So that's going to be an important aspect of understanding georeferencing. So what I want to do here really quick is I'm going to turn off streets, and I'm going to right click on Codorus.jpg, and I'm going to zoom to layer. And so you can see an outline of the Codorus State Park area. This is Lake Marburg, and again this is in southern Pennsylvania near Hanover, Pennsylvania, and so not too far from the Maryland state line, the Maryland-Pennsylvania state line. And so you can see here I'm kind of mousing around, and you can see my coordinates are very low. I'm very close to the 0, 0 location here. So this map has basically been scanned and has been put out in cyberspace, if you will, or digital space, or what I'll refer to as image space, and it basically doesn't know where in the world it is. If I turn on the streets layer, you can see the blue of the ocean behind. Now I'm not going to zoom out in very small increments here, where I'm gonna zoom out little by little in small increments here, and we'll see the map underneath of it sort of refresh, and it will take a second here because again this is data that is on ArcGIS Online. But you can see it looks like my raster is kind of floating out in the middle of nowhere. What that basically means is if I zoom to the extents here, that raster, this Codorus.jpg raster, is sitting right out here in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You can see that I'm in the negative numbers there. But as I move into this upper quadrant, I'm in the positive. Here I'm in the negative and the positive. Here I'm in the negative and the negative. And then here I'm in the positive and the negative. So the 0, 0 point is somewhere around here. So that teeny tiny little raster is floating out there in the middle of the ocean. Now what I want to do before I jump into the next demo and actually start showing you how to do some georeferencing, I want to show you what our destination is. Remember, this raster right here, this larger raster is coming from ArcGIS Online. It knows where it is in the world, and so I want to zoom in here. I'm going to zoom into the eastern United States, let that refresh. I'm going to zoom into Pennsylvania and Maryland. And as I mentioned, Codorus State Park is in the southern portion of Pennsylvania, not too far from Baltimore, from the Maryland-Pennsylvania line coming up from Baltimore up 83, and there's Lake Marburg right there. So as I tighten up a little bit around here, we're basically looking at our destination. So again, you don't see my Codorus.jpg raster because it's sitting out there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. This is actually registered data that knows where it is in the world, and that's what I mean by the reference data. So once you add this layer in, the data frame accepts that coordinate system. When I georeference this JPEG and I put it into the right place in space, then it will accept the coordinate system that is Web Mercator Auxiliary Sphere, which is what this is registered to. Now, why are we doing this? Well, the next module is going to discuss capturing spatial data and actually creating shapefiles, point lines, and polygons from scratch. So the assumption here is that our Codorus.jpg, I'm going to go ahead and zoom to layer here quickly, has some information on it that we would like to exist as a shapefile. Perhaps this map was drawn by hand, perhaps it was drawn by some other software that isn't necessarily GIS software, and now we have some information on it that we would like to create GIS layers from. And so that's really the point here. This is the beginnings of creating our own spatial data by digitizing on screen and by adding attributes, and that's going to be in the next module. So this module is really dedicated to getting this map in the right place in space, and then the next module will be dedicated to actually taking some information off of these maps, whether that's point locations of boat ramps or telephone booths, or line features such as trails, or water features such as the big lake polygon itself. That's going to be focused on in the next module. So again, here at the beginning, we're getting to know the georeferencing tool, learning how to georeference, and then in the next module, we'll actually take some information off this map. So move on to the next demonstration video, and we'll actually start creating some control points between this map and the streets layer, and then we'll use the imagery layer to show how close we came by matching this map up to the imagery layer and the streets layer.